before we journey through time, let us first journey inward. You're here now, and that is enough. Wherever your thoughts have wandered today, wherever your body has carried you, it is time to return to stillness. So gently, close your eyes. Feel the weight of your body supported by the bed, the chair, or the earth beneath you. Let your shoulders soften. Let the muscles behind your eyes release. Let go of trying to be anywhere else. Now, breathe in, slowly, and breathe out, with a sigh. Like waves on the shore, each breath comes, and each breath goes. You need not control them. They know the way. Let the noise of the day fade like morning fog. You are not running from it. You are simply returning to a quieter place, to the rhythm that has always been with you, the rhythm of stillness. Tonight, I will tell you a story, not for your mind to analyze, but for your being to drift alongside. We will walk through the cobbled streets of history. We will listen to voices long gone. We will imagine deeply what it felt like to live, to hope, to suffer, in a world both different and hauntingly familiar. And as we wander together, sleep may come. Let it. You are safe. You are still. You are here. Now, let us begin. The rooster does not crow in the gentle way they do in stories. He is loud, abrupt, unapologetically alive. Your eyes crack open long before sunrise, not from the sound of birdsong, but from the aching stiffness in your joints. The air in the hut is cold, bitterly so. Your nose is the first to feel it, red and stinging in the open air. You lie on a bed of straw, flattened and lumpy from months of use. The mattress is not stuffed with down, but chaff, the dry husks of last year's harvest. It is not warm. It is not comfortable, but it is yours. Your wife sleeps beside you turned away, curled tightly in her linen shift. Your children sleep near the hearth, the thin blankets drawn tight against their small bodies. There's no fire left in the hearth, just the cold scent of yesterday's smoke and a thin layer of ash. The thatch roof creaks above you, swollen with moisture. A slow drip of water planks into a wooden bowl in the corner. Mice scratch through the rushes strewn across the floor. Your breath fogs in front of you. You rub your hands together, feeling the grit of soil still under your nails. The last thing you touched before bed, and the first you'll touch again this morning. You sit up. Your back protests. Your knees crack. These are not the pains of old age. You are not yet 30. These are the aches of a life bent to toil. There's no such thing as sleeping in. The sun does not need to rise for you to know your duties. They are carved into the rhythm of your bones. You reach for your tunic. It is rough, thick wool, hand-woven, patched in places where it has worn thin. The smell of smoke clings to it, along with something else. The sourness of sweat, the must of mold. You dress in silence. Your breath the only sound. Outside, the ground is slick with mud. Always mud. The kind that sucks at your boots and refuses to let go. The kind that leaves a wet coldness in your bones that no fire can fully chase away. Your first task is to check the animals. A pig, a few chickens, a goat if you're fortunate. Their noises greet you with familiarity, though not affection. You check their feed, break the ice on the water trough, and scrape waste from their cramped shelter. There is no pause, no moment to stretch or meditate. The world begins the moment your feet touch the earth. You return to the hut briefly. A crust of black bread waits, hard as wood. You soak it in yesterday's broth, or in weak ale, to soften it enough to chew. It is not tasty. It is not meant to be. It is fuel. You chew not for pleasure, but for necessity. You chew with a jaw already worn from years of grinding grain between your own teeth. There's no ceremony in the start of your day, no time to reflect, only the constant quiet drumbeat of what must be done. You step outside again. The horizon is grey, the sky heavy. You shoulder your hoe and walk the familiar path to the fields. Each step takes you away from comfort. Each step takes you deeper into survival. The land does not pity you. The cold does not pause. And so you work. Hunger is not just the absence of food. It is a constant presence. It lives with you, walks beside you. Your stomach aches in waves, not always of pain, but a gnawing emptiness. You've learned to ignore it, but it never truly leaves. Bread and ale, cabbage and beans. If you're lucky, a spoonful of lard or a sliver of hard cheese. These are your staples. The bread is made from rye, coarse and dark. It tastes of sourness and labour. The grain is ground at the Lord's mill, and you pay for that grinding in coin or grain. There is no escaping the toll. And sometimes the bread is not only rye. Sometimes it's stretched with ground up beans or peas or even the sweepings of the floor. The hunger makes that acceptable, even welcomed. Ale, weak and thin, is safer than water. You drink it warm, in wooden cups, brewed in shared barrels. You never know exactly what's in it, only that it doesn't make you sick. Not as often as the well might. The hunger shapes you. It shapes your children. Their bellies swell from malnutrition, not fullness. Their eyes are wide and tired. They cry without tears when the milk runs out. You do not eat when you're hungry. You eat when there is food. Meat is rare. Pigs are too valuable alive. Chickens too useful for eggs. A bird caught in the forest, a fish netted from the stream. These are blessings. The rhythm of hunger matches the rhythm of the seasons. In spring, you pray this does last. In summer, you toil for harvest. In autumn, you gather. And in winter, you pray again. Spoilage is a constant threat. Mold, rot, rats. A barrel ruined can mean a month of emptiness. You learn to eat around the spoil, to scrape the mold, to thank the gods anyway. The church tells you hunger is holy. That suffering draws you closer to heaven. But heaven feels far away when your child cries through the night. Yet still you endure. You till the land, bow your back, plant the seed. Because that seed is hope. Not for comfort, but for survival. Even when you're tired. Even when the bones in your feet feel like stone. You do it again tomorrow. Because hunger does not pause. Because life does not wait. Your hunger is not private. It is a community experience. The whole village knows when the grain stores run low. The whispers begin. Of famine. Of failed crops to the south. Of lords hoarding more than their due. Children learn early to eat slowly. to savour what little is given. They do not beg for sweets, they ask only for bread. And when there is none, they sleep longer. Hunger becomes sleep's companion. You watch your neighbour bury a stillborn child. The midwife blames cold, or bad humours, or sin. But everyone knows the mother had nothing but turnips for weeks. And still, you keep planting. Still, you patch your boots and mend the seed sacks. Still, you dream of fat carrots, of onions that keep. Your dreams are edible. Even the village celebrations, the rare days of song and ale and firelight, revolve around food. A roasted pig caught and slaughtered for the feast. It is the talk of the village for weeks. Not the music, not the dancing, but the meat, the taste. You remember it for months. The taste of salt, of fat, of more, and then it fades, like all dreams do. Because hunger is not a storm, it is a fog. It surrounds you, dulls the senses, softens the edges of time, but it never leaves, and you never stop moving. Because movement is survival, and survival is all you know. The land does not belong to you. Even though your hands break its soil, your back bends under its weight, and your sweat soaks into its crust, it is not yours. You are a serf, bound not by chains, but by oaths, by custom, by the invisible threads of feudal obligation. You live on the manor, and the manor belongs to the Lord. He may not be cruel, he may not even be near, but his presence lingers in every duty you fulfill, every 10th sheaf of grain you carry to his storehouse, every hour you spend repairing the road, tending his livestock, harvesting his wheat instead of your own. You pay him with your labour, and with your silence. When the reeve, the manor's appointed overseer, walks by, you bow your head. You do not meet his eyes. He is not your equal. He may have been born in the same mud, but now he walks with a straight back and carries a staff of authority. He keeps records, knows how many hens you owe this year, how many days of corv, forced labour, remain unpaid, when the next tax is due, and what punishment follows if it's missed. Some call him a traitor to his own kind, but others say nothing, because they know someone must keep the tally. You rise early not only for survival, but for duty. On Tuesdays, you work your own strip of field. On Thursdays and Saturdays, you work the Lord's. If he calls for aid with the harvest, you leave your own crops half done. If his granary needs repair, you patch his roof while your own leaks. There is no room for protest. You are not taught to question the system. You are taught it is divine. The priest reminds you each Sunday, from the pulpit of the stone church you helped build, with hands calloused and raw. He preaches of humility, of the great chain of being. God above, angels next, then kings, then lords, then you. Lowly and blessed in your suffering, you believe him, or at least you try. The church offers more than sermons. It offers order, a reason for pain, a hope however faint of heaven, of peace, of reward beyond this toil. And yet the obligations stretch wider than the church doors. There is the tithe, a tenth of all you grow, owed to God, collected not by angels, but by men, stored not in the clouds, but in the priest's granary. You give it, not because you can, but because you must. Because the priest says it pleases the Lord, and the reeve ensures it pleases the manor. Your duties spill beyond the field and the church. When the village needs a new fence, you are summoned. When the Lord Steward arrives for inspection, you clean the lane. When the haywind breaks down, you help repair it, even if your own cart sits splintered and unused. These things are not favours. They are expected. You are a thread in the tapestry of the manor, easily replaced, easily forgotten, yet somehow still essential. Even your family ties are shaped by obligation. Your eldest son is your helper in the field, whether he is strong enough or not. Your daughter learns to spin and stitch before she learns her own name. Your wife manages the hearth, the garden, the children, the washing, and still finds time to walk the fields beside you when hands are short. No one is idle. No one is free. Even rest feels borrowed. A stolen moment beside the hearth, a rare Sunday afternoon when the rains come early and the oxen cannot pull. And in those quiet moments you remember your grandfather's stories of a time when the harvest was better, when the Lord was fair, when the winters were mild. You know now those stories were softened by age, smoothed into memory like river stones, because now the taxes feel heavier, the winters feel colder, the labour feels endless. Still, you serve, because to serve is to survive. Refusing is not rebellion, it is ruin. You have seen what happens to those who resist. A neighbour's hut seized for unpaid grain, his family scattered, his tools claimed, the reeve's voice calm and final. You have no rights, only customs, traditions, hopeful notions passed down like recipes, but with none of the comfort. And yet you carry on. You till the land that is not yours. You build the roads that lead only to the Lord's hall. You raise livestock you cannot afford to eat. You raise children you cannot guarantee will live to see their 5th year. And you do this not out of choice, but because it is the only life allowed to you. There are moments, though, small ones. A shared laugh during the harvest. A song rising from tired lips around the communal fire. A piece of warm bread passed between neighbours. A child's muddy face turned toward the sky in wonder at the first snowfall. These are the things that carry you through obligation. The threadbare joys that stitch one day to the next. You cling to them like a sailor to driftwood. Because the tide of duty never recedes, and neither does the weight of being born to serve. You are not weak, but your body is brittle, exposed, constantly battling the world. It begins with a cough, a shallow one from your youngest, maybe 2 winters old. You notice it while you work, her breath catching as she tries to sleep near the hearth. At first, you think little of it. Coughs are common. The air is damp. The hut is cold. But it lingers. The next morning, her cheeks are flushed, her lips pale. Her breathing comes fast and thin, like wind squeezing through broken shutters. You hold her. You murmur prayers. You mix herbs, nettle, yarrow, and horehound if you have any left. Your wife sits beside you, wrapping the child in layers of linen. You both know it is not enough. You don't call for the healer. Not yet. He is a day's walk away. And besides he charges, even for prayers, even for death. So you wait and watch. Your child does not eat. She no longer cries. She simply lies there, small and quiet. That quiet is the worst part. You do not know what causes the illness. None of you do. Some say it's the miasma, the bad air. Others blame witches, or sin, or the turning of the moon. You try not to ask questions. You know what questions bring suspicion. The illness does not stay with one child. Soon, a boy from the next hut falls ill. Then your wife's sister. Then a man from the edge of the village, his teeth gritted in pain as red boils rise across his body. You hear rumors. The priest says this is penance, that your sins have summoned God's anger, that the saints weep for your corruption. You try to believe him, but when your child dies, her skin cold against your chest, your belief flickers. You do not bury her in a coffin. There is no time and no coin. You wrap her in linen, carry her to the churchyard, and dig with your own hands. The earth is hard. She was light in life, but she is heavy now. Heavy in a way that roots itself inside your ribs. The priest offers words, but you hardly hear them. There is no relief, no quiet period of mourning. The field waits. The animals wait. Hunger waits. You return to work the next morning, arms sore not just from the plough, but from the grave. Your wife does not speak. She stares at the hearth where your daughter once lay. Grief is not something you wear openly. It is packed away like winter grain, buried deep, drawn only in small handfuls. Enough to survive, but never enough to feel full. Because life goes on. Because it must. Even when death visits again and again. You've seen it come in waves. Sometimes slow, like a creeping mold. Other times, fast and cruel, like fire through dry thatch. There was a time when the sickness had a name, the Black Death. You were young then, but the memory haunts the village like a ghost. They say the carts rolled through the roads, piled high with bodies. That whole families died in a single night. That the breath of one man could condemn 100 others. The plague came without warning, without logic. Some survived. Most didn't. The healers failed. The priests grew hoarse. The graveyards overflowed. Even now, decades later, it remains a shadow, a whisper in the straw, a fear in every cough. Some days, the fear itself feels like a sickness. You pray, not just for health, but for understanding. Because death does not feel just. It does not feel fair. The good die. The cruel survive. The child is taken. The drunkard lives. You wonder if God is watching, or if he ever was. The church says yes. The church says everything is by divine will, that every illness purifies, that every death is a lesson. But no sermon brings your child back, so you light a candle. You carve a cross into the wood of your door. You scatter herbs, say the old prayers, the ones passed down from your grandmother. Half Christian, half pagan, all desperate. You do what you can, because medicine, as you know it, is a strange and shifting thing. You trust the midwife when she is sober. You trust the herbalist, though the priest calls her dangerous. You even trust the wandering friar, with his satchel of relics and stories of saints who cured blindness with a touch. You trust because there is nothing else. There are no hospitals, no tests, no cures. There are only beliefs, and every belief costs something. You've seen villagers punished for suspicion of witchcraft, women burned, old men beaten, children shunned for birthmarks and stutters. You've seen neighbours exiled for healing in the wrong way, for knowing too much, for saying too little. In times of plague, suspicion is sharper than hunger. You hide your questions. You speak in whispers, because even knowledge is dangerous. And yet knowledge is all that keeps you alive. You learn what to avoid: stagnant water, mouldy grain. You learn to watch the animals. When they stop eating, you do too. You learn to sniff meat, to scrape mold from bread, to store herbs for fever, to boil nettle for cramps, to bleed a chicken for your neighbour when she's sick with colic. You learn to survive with no certainty, because certainty is for the rich. For those who can afford to fall ill, you cannot. Sickness does not come with a warning, and neither does death. It arrives in silence, in the middle of a field, in the middle of a prayer, in the middle of feeding a goat. It comes in childbirth, swift and merciless. You have seen your wife pale and bleeding, her hands gripping your wrist as she delivers another child into this aching world. You do not know if she will live until the next morning. You do not know how to help, so you hold her hand. You offer water. You whisper prayers. And if she survives, you thank every god you've ever known. And if she does not, you bury her beside your daughter. And you keep moving. You do not have the luxury to stop. You must work, always, even as the village thins, even as you age faster than your years, even as your hands grow numb in the cold. The breath of death never leaves your side. But you learn to live next to it, to eat beside it, to dream under its weight. And still you hope that next year's harvest will be better, that the sickness will skip your door, that your next child will live long enough to laugh, because that hope, fragile and trembling, is the one medicine no one can take. And so you go on. You kneel in the dirt, your knees stiff, your heart sore, your breath slow. The sun rises, and you rise with it, again, and again, and again. Faith is the breath between your tasks, not a luxury, not an idea, a necessity. You were born into it, not just belief in a God, but the world it structures. Faith is not something you question. It is the scaffolding around your life. The church tells you when to sow, when to fast, when to feast, when to kneel. It speaks for God, and God speaks through the church. You believe this, or more honestly, you live like you believe it. There is no time to wrestle with doubt. Doubt is for monks, for lords, for those with rooms to retreat to. You have only the open air and the dirt, and the small chapel built from stone and mud, its wooden beams blackened with smoke from 100 Lents. It is there that you go every Sunday, always, no matter the weather, no matter the wounds in your knees or the fever in your chest, because absence is noticed. Absence is whispered about. Absence is dangerous. The church does not ask your opinion. It demands your obedience, and so you kneel. The sermons are in Latin. You do not understand them. You are not meant to. The mystery is the point. You know the important parts. Heaven is a reward, hell is a punishment, saints can intercede, and Christ suffered for you. You don't fully understand what that means, but you feel it. Especially when you look at your blistered hands, or your child's swollen belly, or the dying lamb you can't afford to lose. Suffering is not something you avoid. It's something you live inside of. So if there's a chance it means something, if it connects you to a greater story, to something divine, then that chance is enough. You cling to it like a man clings to the edge of a boat in a storm. And yet, even faith costs coin. You must tithe. 1/10 of everything you grow, everything you earn, goes to the church. Even when you're hungry, even when your children are hungry. You give, sometimes gladly, sometimes bitterly, but always you give. The priest, he wears finer clothes than you, eats better, sleeps softer, but he is your guide to salvation. He blesses your seeds, baptizes your children, and offers last rites when your wife takes her final breath. Without him, your soul might wander. Without the church, your afterlife may burn. You've heard of heretics, those who question the word, who read the Bible in their own tongue, or refuse to venerate saints, or say Christ was merely a man. You've seen what happens to them. In a nearby village, they burned a woman at the stake. She was said to have written letters to the moon, spoken words no one could understand. The crowd watched in silence as the flames climbed her dress. You watched too, and said nothing, because in this world, fear is your daily bread. Fear of hunger, fear of sickness, fear of judgment, both divine and human. It keeps you in line, and yet despite everything, joy exists. It's brief, fragile, but real. Feast days bring a flicker of colour to your otherwise grey world. There are many, over 100 sprinkled throughout the year. Days when you're not supposed to work. Days when the fields go quiet and the village comes alive. On those mornings, you wake with hope. The church bells ring, not for funerals or fasts, but for celebration. The women braid their hair with ribbons. The boys kick a ball of pig bladder through the mud. A fiddler tunes his strings. Bread is shared. Mead is passed. You dance. Polly, but you dance. For a few hours, you forget the weight of your life. You feel young, even if your back says otherwise. You laugh with neighbours you rarely speak to. You watch your surviving children chase chickens in the dust. It's not freedom, but it's close. You remember one such festival, the Feast of Saint Martin. It came after harvest. The hardest work was done. You had food in your belly. Your wife had stitched a new patch to your tunic. The sky was cold, but the fire was warm. There was a juggler, a traveller with painted eyes and a crooked smile. He tossed apples and knives and made the children squeal. You still think of that night, because it felt like something outside time. A pause, a mercy. Of course, it ended. It always does. The next morning, a tax collector arrived. A tally of your grain, a note about your animals, a nod toward your pig, grown fat. You owed more than you had expected. You argued, quietly, and when the taxman left, your pig went with him. You were back in the real world, but you remembered that firelight, that brief moment of humanity, and it stayed with you. In this life, joy is not constant. It's not even common, but when it comes, you hold it tightly, because the rest is so unbearably heavy. The lord of the manor, he doesn't come to these festivals. Not often. When he does, it's to bless the feast or remind you that your joy is permitted, but not your rebellion. He rides a tall horse, wears a fur cloak. His boots cost more than your house. You look at him, and you wonder, what does he fear? Does he tremble before the Black Death? Does he starve when the rains come late? Does he pray in desperation, or only in formality? You do not know, but you suspect the answer. Still, you do not envy him. Not fully. Because lords are born into power, just as you were born into toil. Neither of you chose your lot. The world is built this way, stratified, ossified, immovable. God made it so, or so they say. And yet, sometimes you wonder, what if it could be different? What if you could read? What if you could own your land? What if you could choose not to give your grain, your sweat, your silence? But these thoughts are dangerous, so you bury them, like you bury so many things. Your doubts, your dead, your dreams. You walk to church, you kneel, you bow your head, and when the priest lifts the host, you watch the light strike the stained glass. That brilliant red shard of martyr's blood, that cold blue of the virgin's robe, and for 1 second, you feel something, not certainty, but awe, and that's enough to keep going. That and your children, though still breathing. That and the season's first thaw. That and the way bread smells after it's been baked in a real stone oven. That and the hope, impossible but persistent, that the next life might be better, if not this one. If you were born a peasant, you'd likely marry a peasant. Not for love, not for passion, but for survival. Marriage is not about choosing a soulmate. It's about securing labour, land, and lineage. You marry because you must. Because alone, you cannot hold the plough, gather the harvest, raise the children, spin the wool, patch the roof, haul the water, and still somehow make it through the winter. Marriage is a partnership forged in necessity. For men, it means a pair of hands to cook, sew, and birth children. For women, it means a roof, sometimes, and slightly less precarious food. Your spouse may be someone you've known since childhood, or someone arranged for you by your parents, or your lord. If you're lucky, you might like each other, but that's not guaranteed, and it's not required. Love is something you hope grows, but no one waits for it. The church has strict rules about marriage. You need a priest's blessing. You must not be too closely related, though in small villages, this rule bends more than it breaks. You must commit in the eyes of God. But many marriages are informal. You declare yourselves wed, share bed, live under the same thatch, and that's enough for most. Especially in poorer parishes, where priests are rare and tithes are thin. The formal ceremony may come later, when you can afford it. If you ever can. But regardless of ceremony, children come quickly. Your wife is young, sometimes barely in her teens, and the first child may arrive within a year. The second follows soon after, and then another, and another. Because you don't use contraception. Not really. You've heard whispers of herbs and moon cycles, of women who know how to stop a child before it grows. But those whispers often come with accusations, witch, heretic, murderer. So you don't risk it. Besides, children are not just mouths to feed. They are your future, your labor force, your legacy. Every boy is a potential ploughman. Every girl, a future spinner, baker, or bride. Even if they're small now, even if they scream all night, even if they die before they're 5, they matter. And most do die before 5. Infant mortality is a fact of life. You don't know the numbers. You don't read, don't track, don't graph. But you know the truth. Most babies don't stay long. Your first son, he coughed for days. His lips went blue. Then he was gone. Your second daughter, she stopped crying one night. You woke to silence and knew. You bury them in the churchyard. No caskets. Just wrapped in cloth, pressed into the earth. There's no time to mourn. The next child is coming, or the barley is due, or the taxes, or the frost. You grieve in silence. You keep moving, because if you stop, you won't start again. Your wife grows thinner with each pregnancy. Her teeth loosen, her back bends, her eyes hollow out. But she works until the pain overwhelms her, and even then, she works. In the field, at the hearth, over the basin. You cut the cord with a knife you also use on meat. You pray the baby breathes, that it cries, that it feeds. And when it does, you give thanks. Not to doctors. You've never met one, but to God, to Mary, to St. Margaret, patroness of childbirth. There are no hospitals, no sterile rooms, no interventions. Birth is done in your hut or in your neighbour's with the help of women. Mothers, midwives, sometimes both. They know tricks. How to turn a breech baby, how to boil water, how to rub goose fat on torn flesh. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the baby dies. Sometimes the mother. Sometimes both. If your wife dies in childbirth, you do what must be done. You grieve briefly. Then you remarry. Because the children need a mother. Because you cannot tend the fields and the crib at the same time. If you die, your wife does the same, if she can. Widowhood is dangerous. Without a man to represent her in court, to plough, to protect, she is vulnerable. If she has no sons of age, she may lose her tenancy. She may be forced to remarry quickly or risk losing everything. And so, family is a shifting, fragile thing. Not a nuclear unit, but a web. Children from 2 or 3 marriages. Cousins living under your roof. A grandfather who can't work, but still eats. An aunt who never married, but helps with weaving. Everyone has a role, even the smallest child. Once they can walk, they help. They gather eggs. Scarecrows. Watch younger siblings. You don't have the luxury of letting them play all day. Childhood is short. not by law, but by life. At 7 or 8, your sons follow you to the fields. Your daughters help your wife. If they're lucky, they may find simple joys, skipping stones, carving dolls, singing songs about foxes and frogs. But their time is coming. Work doesn't wait. When your children grow older, they may leave. A daughter might marry into another village, a way to strengthen ties or reduce mouths. A son might apprentice in a town, if you can afford the fee, or join a monastery, or become a soldier. You will likely never see them again. Letters aren't an option. Travel is rare. The world is wide, and you are rooted. You raise your children knowing they may vanish from your life, so you hold them close while you can. But you never forget the burden they carry and place on you. Feeding 5 children in a bad harvest year means hunger for everyone. One sick child can spread illness to the whole house. One bad choice, a stolen egg, a shouted insult, can bring the steward's wrath, or the stocks, or worse. So you teach them caution. You teach them obedience. You teach them fear, not because you are cruel, but because you want them to live. And that's the deepest truth of peasant family life. It's hard to raise a child without breaking a little of yourself. You love them, yes, but that love is not soft. It's not indulgent. It's not expressed in bedtime stories or wooden toys or warm hugs. It's expressed in back-breaking labour, in divided bread, in silent prayers. You don't tell your daughter I love you. You teach her to spin, so she'll be worth marrying. You show her how to salt meat. You tell her what plants will kill her. You don't tell your son I'm proud of you. You hand him a bucket, a blade, a burden, and in doing so, you pass down everything you know, even if it's not enough. Because in the end, family isn't about comfort. It's about survival. And in that, you've done your part, whether you realize it or not. You don't know the lore. You know fear. The lore is not something you learn. It's something you suffer. It's spoken in Latin, written in ink on parchment you'll never touch. It lives in the mouths of lords and bailiffs, in the fists of sheriffs and reeves. You don't know your rights. You know who can hurt you, and who can't. You were born a peasant. That means you are not free. Even if you're technically a free tenant, your freedom is limited. You can't hunt. You can't leave without permission. You can't sell your goods without paying dues. You can't marry off your daughter without approval. You're governed by customary law, the invisible thread of rules spun over centuries in your manor, your village, your patch of land. You don't have a lawyer. You don't know legal terms. You just know this. If you step out of line, someone will make an example of you. The steward arrives once a season, dressed in black, bearing scrolls and the seal of the Lord. He calls a manorial court, and you are required to attend. You kneel. You bow. You listen. Names are called. Fines are issued. A pig broke through a fence. A man sold ale without a license. A woman didn't bake her bread in the Lord's oven. A child stole eggs. No one disputes it. Why would they? To speak out is to risk more fines, or worse. And punishment is not abstract. It's physical. It's visible. It's designed to be felt. If you steal, you may lose a hand. If you poach a deer, you may lose an eye, or both. If you're caught lying under oath, you may be branded. If you're accused of witchcraft, and you're poor, female, or strange, you may be drowned. You've seen it. You saw a neighbour tied to a cart and whipped through the village. You saw a boy locked in the stocks for 2 days, pelted with dung. You saw a man disappear, taken to the castle, never returned. There is no appeal, no lawyer, no jury of your peers. There is only judgment, often cruel, sometimes arbitrary. The worst part, guilt isn't always required. Trial by ordeal is still alive in places. You've heard of it, accused men forced to carry red-hot iron a certain number of paces. If the burn heals clean, within 3 days, they are innocent. If it festers, they are guilty. Women might be bound and thrown into a river. If they sink, they are innocent, but likely drowned. If they float, they are guilty, which is sustained by Satan, fit to be burned. You know these are not tests of truth. They are tests of favour, of who the Lord likes, of what the priest whispers, of who's been causing trouble lately. You keep your head down. You teach your children to do the same. Some rules are unspoken. Never gather wood from the forest without permission. Even fallen branches belong to the Lord. He wants them for his hearths and ovens. Never fish the stream behind the mill. The water may run through your land, but the rights are his. Never speak ill of the church or its men, even when they take your last coins for burial fees, even when they sleep in warm cloisters while your baby coughs himself to death. The church, too, has its own courts. Canon law. If you're accused of fornication, heresy, or failure to tithe, it's not the manor court that calls you. It's the bishop's men. They don't need evidence. A rumour may do. And though they claim to offer penance, not punishment, penance can mean years of fasting, or walking barefoot to a distant shrine, or paying fines you can't afford. And if your sin is great, or your enemy is powerful, it can mean excommunication. That is, in the eyes of God, you are dead. No sacraments, no burial, no marriage, no forgiveness. Even your neighbours may stop speaking to you. And then there is debt. Debt is a noose you cannot see until it pulls tight. You owe rent to the Lord, a tithe to the church, a fee to the miller, to the blacksmith, to the reeve. And if the harvest fails, or cow dies, or a storm ruins your barley, the debts don't disappear. They compound. You may have to sell your tools, your winter food, even your own children, sent into indenture. And if that's not enough, you may be imprisoned. Not in a cell with a bed and bars, but in a stone pit beneath the hall, a dungeon, lit by torches, filled with lice and screaming. You won't last long. And yet, for all this, you do have some protections, strange as it sounds. Because if the steward's justice is harsh, it is also slow. Because the church, for all its greed, sometimes shelters the accused. Because your fellow peasants, the people around you, know that if one of you burns, any of you could be next. So you help each other. If a neighbour is fined, you might lend him grain. If a girl is accused of being with child out of wedlock, the women may close ranks around her. Name another man, invent a husband, find a ring. If the reeve accuses a boy of theft, the village might claim he was sick that day, or wasn't even there. This isn't always enough, but sometimes it is. Your justice is not written in books. It is communal. It lives in favors, in silence, in loyalty. You learn who will speak for you and who won't. And sometimes justice finds cracks in the wall. You hear stories of a reeve court stealing grain, of a lord punished by the king for overtaxing his villeins, of a priest found drunk and flogged in the street. You cling to these stories. They remind you that no one is truly safe, not even those who rule. And then there's God's justice, the only kind you truly trust. You believe that those who wrong you will pay in the end, that the proud will fall, that the wicked will be judged. Maybe not now, maybe not in this life, but eventually. It's what keeps you from going mad. It's what lets you forgive the unpunished cruelty. Because if this life were the only court, it would be unbearable. You don't pray for wealth. You don't pray for fairness. You pray for mercy. Because in this world, justice is rare, and often it doesn't look like justice at all. You are always hungry. Not starving, not usually, but hungry. There is a dull, persistent ache in your belly, like something unfinished. A hunger that is not sharp, not terrifying, but slow, constant. You go to sleep with it. You wake with it. You know it like you know your own heartbeat. You eat twice a day, maybe 3 if you're lucky. Breakfast is dark bread, maybe with cheese if the cow is milking. Maybe onions, maybe nothing. Dinner, the main meal, is a pottage, boiled grains, beans, leeks, maybe a bit of salted pork or dried fish if there's any left from the winter. And sometimes, especially in early spring, there isn't. They call it the hungry gap, the time when winter's daws are gone and nothing new is grown yet, the time when even the rats seem thinner. You chew bitter roots, pick nettles, boil weeds. You eat less so your children can eat more. You add more water to the stew. You lick the bowl clean. The rich talk about fasting for Lent. You fast because there is no food. You cannot always work when you are hungry, but you work anyway. Because if you stop, you'll die. The barley won't plant itself. The sheep won't birth themselves. The thatch won't repair itself. Hunger is not an excuse. It's a condition, part of life. And then, of course, there is sickness. You don't know words like bacteria, virus, or sanitation, but you know what makes people sick. Bad smells, cold air, rotten meat, spirits, God's wrath. You fear plague because you've seen it. It comes without warning. A cough, a shiver, a boil. One day someone is fine. The next, they're dead. Or worse, alive but rotting. You remember how the priest covered his mouth with cloth, how the corpses were carted out by the dozen, how the church bells rang until the wringer collapsed. No one came to help. No doctor. No monk. Not even the steward. The Lord fled to his country manor. The bishop locked the doors. You buried your sister yourself. You dug the hole with your bare hands. You wrapped her in your old cloak. You did not cry, because you had no water left for tears. You just whispered her name and covered her face. And yet, plague is rare. Most die slowly. Fever, coughing, childbirth, infection, worms. A small wound from a nail can rot the whole leg. A sore throat can close your windpipe. Diarrhea, untreated, becomes death. And then there are the things that have no name. The shaking sickness, the sleep that never ends, the red rash that eats the skin. You try everything. You bleed the sick with leeches, as the herb wife tells you. You pray. You burn sweet herbs. You bring relics from the church. Sometimes it works. Mostly it doesn't. And when it doesn't, death is slow. You sit beside the straw bed, holding your mother's hand as she gasps. You tell her she will be with God. You lie, because you're not sure. You're not sure of anything anymore. She dies in the night. You wash her body in cold water, wrap it in linen, and place coins on her eyes if you have them. You try to pay the priest for a proper burial, but if you cannot, she is buried quickly without a sermon. Sometimes people bury their dead at night, in secret, because the church demands fees, and will refuse the dead if they aren't paid. You want to be angry, but the priest looks thinner than you. He's hungry too. Childbirth is a coin flip. Your wife has 6 children. 2 live past age 5. The midwife is a local woman with strong hands, old eyes, and no formal training. But she has experience, and that's more than most. The room smells of blood, sweat, and herbs. You are not allowed in. You wait outside, praying. If the child lives, it is baptized the same day. If not, you bury it in the garden. You mark the spot with a stone. You return to work the next day. Because the fields don't wait. You try not to love the babies too quickly, too deeply, because you've lost so many. But when they wrap their tiny fingers around yours, when they gurgle or smile, you break. You weep quietly in the barn. You bury too many people. You bury your sister, your mother, your second son. You bury your neighbour who fell from a ladder. You bury the old man who never stopped talking about Normandy. Each time, it feels like the earth is swallowing your world. And yet, somehow, you go on. Because the living need you. Because someone has to keep the fire burning. You learn rituals for death. You light candles. You sprinkle holy water. You speak the name of the dead each week. You wear dark colours. You plant flowers where the grave was dug. If you're lucky, the church tolls the bell. If not, you toll it yourself. There are no hospitals. There are no graveyards for the poor. The land swallows the dead, and you carry on, always aware that your turn will come. But you are not without care. The midwife, the herb wife, the wise man, the bone sitter. They have knowledge passed from mother to daughter, from healer to apprentice. They know which leaves numb pain, which bark helps the fever, which root to chew when the belly cramps. And sometimes they save lives. More than the monks, more than the priests. But they are feared too, because they know secrets. And a woman who knows too much can be called a witch. So they are careful. They speak in whispers. They never claim too much. Just help, just herbs, just kindness. And that's all most people ask for. Kindness. A warm meal when your wife is dying. A neighbour to tend the sheep while you bury your child. a hand to help carry the body. It's not always enough, but it's something. And sometimes, something is all you have. You think of death daily, not with terror, with familiarity. You plan for it. You wonder who will take your place. You try to teach your son the tools, the seasons, the names of the winds. You try to leave him a good reputation. So when you die, as you know you will, he will be remembered as the son of a good man. You hope that's enough. You don't expect legacy. You don't expect glory. You expect only what everyone expects, a clean death, a little food for the priest, a grave deep enough that foxes won't dig, a name spoken once a year, and maybe, if God is kind, a place in paradise. You do not fear death. You fear leaving things undone. Not every day is sorrow. Not every moment is toil. Even under the weight of poverty and pain, you laugh. You must laugh, because the world is bleak enough without joy. So you find joy in small things, in the dance of a child in spring mud, in the bright red of a wild poppy, in the soft sound of bread baking. In song, there is always music. You do not own a lute or harp, but someone in the village has a pipe, or fiddle, or at least a drum carved from old wood and goat skin. And where there is music, there is dancing. It begins at festivals, and there are many. Pandalmers, Easter, May Day, Lammers, All Hallows, Christmas. The church calendar is your calendar. Feasts, saints, days, market days, they give structure to your world. You count time in these rhythms, a week after St. Michael's or before Martinmas. And the church, though harsh at times, gives moments of reprieve. On feast days, you rest. The Lord cannot call you to work. The mills go quiet. The ploughs sit idle, and you gather with your neighbours. You wear your best tunic. You braid flowers into your daughter's hair. There is ale, thick and warm. There is meat, not much, but more than usual. And there is dancing. The songs are old, older than the church sometimes, passed from mother to child by memory alone. They tell of lost love, of saints, of tricksters and beasts, of death and harvest. You sing while spinning, while hoeing, while threshing. You hum as you work, as you work, as you bury your dead. Some songs are bawdy, some are sacred, most are somewhere in between. Children chant rhymes while chasing each other with sticks. Teenagers invent games that risk bruises and broken noses. Even elders join the circle dances when their knees allow it. And sometimes you fall in love, not always as the church tells you. Sometimes you court in the hedgerows, in the hilft, behind the barn. Your heart flutters when she passes. You find excuses to walk past her cottage. You carve her initials into a tree. You bring her a small gift, a painted pebble, a ribbon, a bit of honeycomb. If she smiles, your world brightens. If she sings your name into a tune, your blood sings too. Marriage is not always about love. Often it's about land, labour, survival. But even so, you try to find happiness. A companion, a partner, someone to laugh with, to mourn with, to fight with, and then forgive. Your wedding is not extravagant. There is no white dress, no golden rings. You kneel in church. You speak your vows. You share a piece of bread and a cup of ale. And later, in the village square, there is dancing. There is always dancing. Even in the dark months. Even in famine. Someone has a story, a song, a joke. You gather by firelight. You tell tales of Robin Hood, of King Arthur, of wolves in the forest, of ghosts that whisper at the edge of the moor. You know which neighbour tells the best stories. You know which child will interrupt and ruin the mood, and which elder will sigh and fix it with a single line. Storytelling is more than amusement. It is medicine. It is how you pass the time, how you preserve knowledge, how you teach your children what to fear, what to hope for, what it means to be human. And there is hope. Not loud hope, not hope with trumpets, but quiet, steady, peasant hope. Hope that the next harvest will be better. Hope that your daughter's cough is not the plague. Hope that the new Lord Steward will be less cruel than the last. Hope that the baby you buried was the last you'll lose. You learn to celebrate small victories. The birth of a lamb, a dry week during planting, a kiss beneath the maple, a dream without nightmares. The hope is not blind. It does not ignore the suffering, but it refuses to be extinguished by it. It insists that even a poor life can have joy, even a short life can be full, and even a hard life is worth something. That is why you plant trees whose shade you'll never sit in. Why you teach your child to read letters, even if you barely can. Why save a coin for your wife's candle, even when your belly aches. You believe deeply that your life matters, not because of wealth, not because of power, but because God sees you. And even if God is sometimes cruel, you still believe He watches. You look up at the stars and wonder. You stare at the sunrise and feel something stir in your chest. You hear the cry of your newborn and remember what love feels like. You look at the old woman hunched over her spinning wheel and see wisdom. You watch the youngest children skip across the stream and see the future. You are not educated in the way monks are. But you are not ignorant. You know the signs of rain by the smell of the wind. You know how to read the hoofprints in the mud. You can tell which herb will calm a stomach and which will cause death. You know when someone is lying and when they are just broken. And you know, with bone-deep certainty, that joy must be taken where it grows. Because if you wait for it to be given, it may never come. So you laugh, loudly, even when you shouldn't. You dance badly. You sing off-key. You love foolishly. You forgive reluctantly. And somehow, despite everything, you live. You are not what the history books remember. You are not a king, a knight, or a saint. You are a peasant, and you matter. You will not be remembered by name. There will be no statue of you in the town square, no scroll in the Lord's hall with your deeds in ink, no song sung for your courage in battle or your wisdom in council. You are a peasant, and peasants pass like shadows, but even shadows stretch across time. Your hands have touched the soil that feeds generations. Your body has borne the weight that others stood upon. Your life has become part of the very structure of the world that forgets you. Still, you are here, and that matters. You are here, walking barefoot through frost-beaten fields. You are here, kneeling beside your dying child, and whispering prayers you were not sure would be heard. You are here, laughing with your friends at the harvest feast, drunk on weak ale and joy. And though your name may vanish, your labour remains. The roads cobbled with stones you carried, the bands raised with wood you split, the terraces carved into the hillsides by your endless digging, the grain you sowed, harvested, milled, and baked. It fed more than just your family. It built towns. It sustained armies. It kept entire countries from falling to ruin. You were not part of history as it was written, but you were part of history as it was lived. And not just through your work, through your choices. When your friend was taken by the pox, and you shared your food with his widow, that was history. When you taught your son to pray, when you helped dig a well, when you held your wife as she wept, and told her she would not go hungry, not while you breathed. Those are the invisible threads that wove the world together. You were a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a friend. You were human in all the ways that count, and you passed that on to your children, and they passed it to theirs. And so, even as your bones turned to dust in the churchyard, your presence lingered, in the way your daughter braided her hair, just as you once did, in the way your grandson planted turnips, with the same rhythm you taught him, in the way someone, long after your death, walked the same path to the fields and felt, for a moment, the peace of routine. Your legacy is not carved in stone. It is breathed into the wind. It is sown into the grain. It is remembered in bodies, in gestures, in traditions so old that no one recalls where they began. You will not be remembered by name, but you will not be forgotten, because you lived. You lived when life was brutal and brief. You lived when your Lord could claim your harvest, your labour, your very body. You lived when disease crept through the village like smoke through a keyhole. You lived when winter howled and spring came too late. You lived when your child died. You lived when your neighbour's roof collapsed. You lived when hope was a candle in a windstorm. You lived even when no one thanked you. You did not stop. And that, too, is a kind of greatness, because you endured. You endured in ways the kings never had to. You endured with fewer words and heavier loads. You endured not for glory, but for love, for stubbornness, for survival. And though you could not read, you understood things scholars never would. You knew that milk must be stirred gently, that ash can clean a pot, that a goat will forgive, but a pig will not, that laughter shared around a fire will outlast the fire itself. And you pass that down to us, because we, now, in this future world of lights and glass and clocks, are still walking paths you once trod. We eat bread, though we no longer mill the grain ourselves. We sing songs, though the melodies have changed. We marry, we grieve, we hope, we work, just as you did. You are in our bones. We carry you with us. You are the anonymous ancestor, the root beneath the tree, the dust in our blood. And as long as there are people who rise each morning despite their weariness, who tend the sick, who plant in faith, who give when they have little, who smile even in the mud, then you, the medieval peasant, are not gone. You endure. Let us return now, back from the fields, back from the smoke and hunger and song. Let the world of the past drift behind you, like a dream at dawn. Take a breath. Feel your body, here and now. Warm, safe, alive. Open your eyes slowly if they're closed. And remember, though your comforts may be modern, your spirit is ancient. Part of you knows hardship. And part of you, always,